The lights went out at 3 a.m., not in a city, not in a residential neighborhood. Dozens of critical, undefended electrical substations across the American heartland have been systematically destroyed in a coordinated physical assault. The FBI is hunting for ghosts, but the intelligence points to Tehran. Has Iran just activated sleeper cells on American soil to cripple the U.S. war machine from within? This was not a cyber attack. It was not a sophisticated piece of malware that burrowed its way through firewalls. This was brutal, physical, and terrifyingly simple. The attacks were carried out with bolt cutters, high-caliber rifles, and crude but effective thermite charges placed on critical transformer cooling systems. They were silent, they were precise, and they were simultaneous. Across 5 states, from the plains of Texas to the industrial belt of Ohio, key nodes of the American power grid were severed with military precision. These were not random targets. The attackers bypassed substations that power civilian centers, hospitals, and schools. Instead, they surgically targeted the infrastructure that forms the lifeblood of America's defense industrial base. The substation outside Lima, Ohio, powered the factory building the Abrams X tank. The node destroyed in Fort Worth, Texas, fed the assembly line for the F-35 Lightning II. Another, in rural Arizona, was essential for a key Raytheon facility manufacturing guidance systems for Tomahawk missiles. This was a decapitation strike aimed not at the head of the military, but at its industrial heart. For years, analysts at the Pentagon have war-gamed scenarios just like this. The vulnerability of the U.S. electrical grid is the nation's Achilles heel. It is not a single, resilient entity, but a fragile, sprawling patchwork of over 55,000 substations, many owned by private companies, often protected by little more than a chain-link fence and a single security camera. It is a soft target of continental proportions, and last night, an unknown enemy proved they knew exactly where to cut to make the arsenal of democracy bleed. The initial response was chaos. Local authorities reported vandalism. Power companies scrambled to deal with what they thought were cascading equipment failures. But by sunrise, the pattern became undeniable. The FBI's counterterrorism division took the lead, with agents swarming dozens of crime scenes that were cold, sterile, and maddeningly clean. No fingerprints, no footprints, no shell casings left behind. The attackers moved like phantoms, executing their mission and vanishing back into the fabric of the country. Rehook 1. But here is what the initial reports are not telling you. The attacks were not limited to the power grid. A deeper analysis by the National Security Agency has just confirmed that in the hour preceding the blackout, 3 major fiber optic network hubs were also severed. These were trunk lines, the digital superhighways that carry vast amounts of data. They were located miles away from the substations but served the exact same defense contractors. This wasn't just about cutting the power. It was a combined arms assault designed to blind and isolate America's most critical production facilities, cutting them off from their supply chains and from the Pentagon's command and control network. This level of planning and coordination screams state-sponsored activity. This is not the work of domestic extremists or low-level terrorists. The target selection required granular intelligence on the U.S. grid, an understanding of industrial supply chains, and the logistical capability to strike dozens of targets across thousands of miles in a tightly coordinated time window. The attackers knew which transformers were most critical, which cooling systems lacked redundancy, and which fiber optic lines had no immediate backup. They had blueprints. They had inside knowledge. And now, the whispers are starting. In the encrypted channels monitored by Fort Meade, the chatter is undeniable. Signals intelligence has picked up fragments from known Quds force networks, coded messages celebrating a successful operation, vague, ominous references to Phase Aleph being complete. One intercepted communication, translated from Farsi, spoke of unplugging the giant. The intelligence is preliminary, but the working theory inside the intelligence community is hardening by the hour. Iran has just opened a new front in its shadow war with the United States. And this time, the front is inside America itself. For decades, the primary threat from Iranian sleeper cells was believed to be targeted assassinations or bombings of high-profile locations. The playbook was thought to be modeled on Hezbollah, their most successful proxy. But this is something different, something new, and far more strategic. Instead of a bloody attack designed to create terror and headlines, they chose a silent, sterile attack designed to cripple logistics and defense readiness. It's a classic move in asymmetrical warfare. If you cannot sink an enemy's aircraft carriers, you prevent the factories from building the missiles those carriers need. Rehook 2. And as of 1 hour ago, a new piece of intelligence has just broken, coming from a high-level source within Mossad, relayed to their CIA counterparts in Langley. The operation has a code name: the Circuit Breaker Directive. It was allegedly planned for over 2 years by a secretive unit within the Quds Forces Special Operations Directorate. The team that carried it out on U.S. soil is known only as Unit 745. This confirms the worst fears of U.S. intelligence. This was not a proxy attack. The evidence suggests this was a direct action by one of Iran's most elite, clandestine units, operating undetected inside the continental United States. The question is no longer if Iran was involved, but how. How did a team of foreign operatives procure weapons, conduct reconnaissance on dozens of secure locations, and execute a perfectly synchronized attack without tripping a single alarm? The implications are staggering. It suggests the existence of a sophisticated and disciplined support network that has been cultivated on U.S. soil for years, waiting for the activation order. People who can provide safe houses, vehicles, and logistical aid without drawing attention from law enforcement. The economic and military fallout is already beginning. Trading on the New York Stock Exchange saw defense sector stocks plummet in pre-market activity. Lockheed Martin, Northrop Grumman, and General Dynamics are all reporting critical production slowdowns. A memo, leaked from the Department of Defense, warns that the production halt could delay the deployment of an armored brigade combat team to Europe by at least 3 weeks and affect the delivery of air-to-air missiles destined for the Indo-Pacific. The attack, which lasted less than an hour, may have just achieved a strategic effect that Iran's conventional forces never could. Federal investigators are now in a desperate race against time, sifting through mountains of data. They're reviewing every border crossing record for the last 24 months. They're scrubbing databases of suspicious foreign nationals and cross-referencing watch lists with local police reports of stolen vehicles or strange activity near the targeted sites. But the ghosts of Unit 745 covered their tracks with chilling proficiency. There is, however, one potential break in the case. One mistake. Near a smoldering substation in rural Pennsylvania, state troopers discovered a burned-out utility van, abandoned in a ditch 2 miles from the attack site. The vehicle was incinerated, but forensics teams managed to recover a fragment of the rear license plate from the wreckage, partially melted but still legible. The plate was run through every database. It didn't belong to an individual. It was registered to a small import-export business, a shell company. The company's registration documents lead to an address in Dearborn, Michigan. But it's not a business. It's a community cultural center, one that has been on a covert terror watch list for over a decade due to suspected links to Hezbollah fundraising. The hunt is no longer for ghosts. Agents are mobilizing now, a quiet, undeclared siege beginning to form around the building. They are racing against the clock before Unit 745 can rearm, regroup, and strike again. The order is to go in, but they have no idea what they're about to find inside. The order is to go in, but they have no idea what they're about to find inside. The assault is a textbook execution. Silent, swift, and overwhelming. Within 90 seconds, every entrance is breached simultaneously. Doors are smashed open, windows shattered, but there's no return fire. No shouted commands in Farsi, no explosion from a suicide vest. There is only silence. An unnerving, unnatural calm. The building is clean. Too clean. The main floor is a community space, a prayer room, a classroom, a kitchen. It's been recently scrubbed with bleach, but not recently enough to hide everything. A blacklight sweep reveals trace amounts of C4 residue near a ventilation shaft and the faint chemical signature of motor oil on the floor of a back office. They were here, but they are long gone. Rehook 3. But what they found in the basement wasn't a terrorist safe house. It was a tomb, and it revealed a horrifying truth that sent a shockwave all the way to the White House Situation Room. Was crippling America's military-industrial complex the real goal, or was it just a smokescreen for something far, far worse? Downstairs, it wasn't an armory. It was a makeshift laboratory. Stainless steel tables were wiped clean, but faint stains remained. In a sealed biohazard disposal bin, forensics found discarded syringes and shattered glass vials. But the most terrifying discovery was pinned to a corkboard on the far wall. It wasn't a map of fiber optic junctions or power grids. It was a hydrological map of the Great Lakes Basin, the source of drinking water for over 40 million people. Next to it were architectural plans for the HVAC systems of 3 major international airports: O'Hare, Detroit Metro, and LAX. Suddenly, the logic of the attack shifted. The Circuit Breaker Directive wasn't the main event. It was the setup. It was a sophisticated military feint designed to do one thing: paralyzed the American response system. To ground the cargo planes needed to move medical supplies. To stop the factories that produce vaccines and ventilators. To sever the communication lines used by the CDC and FEMA. They weren't trying to stop the military from fighting a war overseas. They were trying to stop it from fighting a war at home. Analysis of the residue from the vials came back from the mobile lab. The preliminary finding: a highly virulent, weaponized strain of H5N1 avian influenza, genetically modified for aerosolized transmission between humans. The ghosts of Unit 745 weren't just saboteurs. They were heralds of a plague. And as this horrifying new reality sets in, another piece of intelligence comes in, this time from a frantic source inside the German BND. They've been tracking a person of interest for months. A renowned Iranian virologist named Drive Arash Zanjani. He was a leading figure in Iran's legal vaccine research program until he disappeared from his Tehran laboratory 6 months ago. 2 weeks after his disappearance, he was spotted on surveillance footage at an airport in Hamburg. He boarded a flight to Mexico City using a forged Swiss passport. He has not been seen since, but his face now matches a grainy image pulled from a gas station security camera an hour outside Dearborn, captured just 3 days ago. The hunter has a face, and the clock is no longer ticking in weeks or days. It is ticking in hours. The intelligence triggers a silent, nationwide alarm. Zanjani isn't at a water intake station. That was a contingency. The primary target is faster, more catastrophic: an airport. With 3 potential targets and less than an hour, the tactical choice is made based on proximity. Every available federal asset converges on Detroit Metro Airport. They can't shut it down. They can't trigger a mass panic. Zanjani could release the agent anywhere. The hunt must be invisible. A scalpel, not a sledgehammer. Undercover agents melt into the crowds of travelers, their faces calm, their eyes hunting, guided by frantic whispers in their earpieces. Surveillance footage catches him. He's no longer a doctor. He's a ghost, in a maintenance uniform, pushing a cleaning cart. He's moving with purpose, not towards the passenger areas, but towards the airport's heart, its lungs, the central HVAC control and air circulation hub for the entire McNamara terminal. The team closes in, moving through the concrete guts of the airport, a labyrinth of pipes and roaring machinery. They find the control room door. It's been locked from the inside. They have seconds, not minutes. The order is given. Breaching charges are placed. The explosion is a muffled crump, swallowed by the industrial noise. The team pours in to find Zanjani on a steel catwalk, standing directly over the massive, roaring intake fan that feeds air to 1 million travelers. In his hands is not a bomb, but a small, pressurized aerosol canister. He holds it like a prayer. There is no negotiation, no shouted demands, just the cold, tired eyes of a man who has already accepted his own death. He sees the agents, his finger tightening on the actuator. He is beyond reason, beyond threats. He is the final, terrible step in a plan years in the making. But as he prepares to press the button, a single, high-velocity round shatters the canister in his hand. Not an explosive round, but a specialized kinetic slug. The liquid inside, now unpressurized, simply spatters harmlessly against his chest and the metal grating. A second shot, a tranquilizer dart, slams into his neck. Zanjani stumbles, his eyes wide with shock, not at being shot, but at the failure of his life's dark work. He collapses before he can fall into the machinery below. The plague is contained. The ghost is captured. The war at home, the one nobody knew was being fought, is over. For now, the circuit breaker directive was more than a feint. It was a message, a proof of concept. It demonstrated that the front lines of the 21st century are no longer in distant deserts or mountain ranges. They are the fiber optic cables beneath our streets, the power grids that light our homes, and the air that we breathe. The war of the future won't be declared. Its soldiers will be invisible, and its first casualties will never know what hit them. To understand the conflicts that are no longer fought with flags and armies, but with code and contagion, you have to look deeper. To see the stories unfolding on the front you've never been shown, subscribe to Breaking_the_Front.